It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the 4 films of November 9th, 2007. We have one of the big Christmas movies for the year for the whole family, for reals this time, and we also have Tom Cruise starring in a political thriller with Robert Redford and Meryl Streep, in which Redford directs. A horror film that's, I guess, supposed to be in the same vein as something like Red Eye, but once you see it, you'll see it's pretty freaking stupid. But we also finally have the this year's Best Picture winner at the Academy Awards. But before we get to all those movies, let's talk about the biggest new release of the weekend, which is, of course, Vince Vaughn and Paul Giamatti in the Christmas comedy Fred Claus.
Oh, the weather outside is frightful.
Every Christmas, families get together to rekindle their love for each other. Even Santa Claus and his brother Fred.
Stop trying to have Mom call me, because I don't want to talk to Mom. I've never done anything like that. Have you ever said, oh, Mom's here, jump on and say hi, she's standing right here. Have you ever done that?
Not to my knowledge.
Right,
and
well, you have.
like, no.
Yes, you have.
You shouldn't eat like that. You're going to tear something internally.
You've already torn something internally in me.
Wow.
How the reindeer doing?
They're good. They're good. Yeah, Rudolph has some kind of skin thing going on.
Why'd you get a
I
dog?
want to make it this year. Why don't I get a dog?
What are you going to do with the reindeer? Can't fetch his
But
thing?
dogs can't fly.
Can't bark?
But a dog can't fly.
Oh, Wet Willie. Stop it. Wet Willie. You stop it. Step back like you're 5.
Just out of curiosity, whose house was that they recorded that trailer in? Because that is not at anyone's house in the movie. They just broke into somebody's house on one Christmas, not even Christmas Eve, just any night in 2006 and said, let's go ahead and film this trailer in here and then get the hell on out of here. I mean, that's what I feel like Santa and his brother did in that. Because, yeah, that is not in the movie whatsoever. That house does not exist at all. But, it's funny that they say this is from the director of Wedding Crashers, even though this trailer came out first in front of Happy Feet, which is a completely different film for anybody than Happy Feet is. Happy Feet is a fun kids film with an existential message about life and all that. But Happy Feet's PG, Wedding Crashers is R. So I don't know what the hell they were thinking of putting that in there, but I digress. This is Fred Claus, and as you can see from the story, you have Vince Vaughn playing Fred Claus, the brother of Santa Claus, played by Paul Giamatti. And he's called in to help his brother at the North Pole when Santa realizes that his holiday is basically in danger of being shut down by this holiday inspector played by Kevin Spacey. And Vince Vaughn's brought in there to help things out, and he's got his mother played by Kathy Bates, and also there's elves played by John Michael Higgins, Elizabeth Banks. Fred's got a girlfriend played by Rachel Weisz. Ludacris is also one of the elves as well, and it's pretty much chaos all across the board, but a really good concept overall, a really fun idea that's actually based off of a poem called A Legend of Santa and His Brother Fred. But good idea, it's not even bad execution, but lackluster execution, because it's not a bad movie per se. It isn't a bad movie by any means necessary. It does have an idea of what it's trying to accomplish here, and there's times when the message is pretty good too. Like even the naughty kids need to get something for Christmas that's a good thing to actually go to. That's a good thing to actually tell people about this in a movie like this. But when you watch the film, though, the biggest problem with this film is that it can't decide on which angle does it want to go with here. Does it want to be the screwball over-the-top Christmas comedy, or does it want to be a more heartfelt film, something on the lines of Arthur Christmas? And you get that they're trying to copy the Santa Claus formula. I mean, even the North Pole looks like something straight out of the Santa Claus. Like, if you had put the Santa Claus and then Fred Claus underneath it, like that was a subtitle for a Santa Claus movie, would you be able to tell the difference between this and the Tim Allen movies? Me personally, I couldn't tell you the difference, but yeah, this is definitely a very mixed bag of a movie. When I came out of it watching it for the first time, I was just kind of like, it's not bad. It's okay for what it is, but it is definitely a film that has a lot more that's kind of wrong about it than there is good about it. There are some good elements to it, but the tonal shifts are just all over the place. The comedy isn't really all that funny. and just splitting the differences between this movie and the Santa Claus are just way too. It's hard to do here, and I don't know, the idea of making some of these big names elves, notable names like elves like John Michael Higgins, Elizabeth Banks, Ludacris, that doesn't really work here. And the Santa Claus had the advantage of they were all kids, so at least it makes sense why they're all little people, and that's why they're elves. Here, there's just no excuse. They're just there to be these faces that you might recognize, but they're elves this time around. And yeah, it's a very clustered movie and a cluttered mess all across the board. And there are times when the movie can be really funny and really clever. Like there's a great bit towards the end of the movie where, Fred goes to this Siblings Anonymous meeting, and you see Frank Stallone, Sylvester Stallone's brother, and you also see Roger Clinton, Roger Clinton, the half-brother of Bill Clinton, and Stephen Baldwin, of course, part of the Baldwin family. Like, little scenes like that are really funny. Those are the moments where it's just like, okay, you got a good idea here, but I just wish there was more of that all throughout the film in general. But unfortunately, it just felt like a film that they just wanted to make because they wanted to make the next great Christmas classic. But unlike movies we talked about in the 2000s, like Christmas with the Cranks, Surviving Christmas, and Deck the Halls, there was a lot of ambition to this, and you could tell that they are indeed trying to make something fun and enjoyable and something that will stand as a holiday classic, but it's just not there with some of the great Christmas classics of all time, unfortunately. And at the time, the film was seen as kind of a bomb because it did cost $100 million to make. It didn't even make that back when it first came out. It only brought in $97 million worldwide, but, it's gone on to have a little bit of longevity because of it playing on Christmas so many times since then. You see it on AMC every holiday season now, but as far as the film itself goes, it's fine, I guess. It's right in the middle. Like, it's a movie where I can't say it's a great movie, but I can't say it's a bad movie either, because there are times when they are at least trying to do something fun and something unique with the idea. And it's a good concept overall, but just a mediocre execution all across the board that really just goes like, you guys were almost there, and you just couldn't do that one single thing to elevate this to a whole nother level. I mean, it's like I said, it's not a bad movie by any means necessary, but it's not a movie that you're going to want to watch every Christmas, or every couple, like, maybe once every 5 years. If there's literally nothing else on television during the holiday season, you could pop this on. It's like, I would watch this on a late night viewing before I go to bed. Like, if I'm watching AMC at like 2 a.m. on like a Wednesday night in December, and it's playing on TV and there's literally nothing else on, I'll pop it in there and watch it. I mean, like I said, it's not a bad movie, but just a film that feels like there's so much more that could have been done with it. But unfortunately, it's just not there for me to recommend it all the way through. So a very mixed opinion on Fred Claus. Like I said, not a bad Christmas movie, but definitely not one of the good ones that could be considered a holiday classic that you have to watch every year. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next film, which is a very interesting film, considering the behind-the-scenes history of it. Let's talk about Lions for Lambs.
On November 9,
So, what is this?
behind every big story,
We all need a win.
Is that code for off the record?
behind every closed door,
You're on your own.
behind every enemy line,
Rescue's coming!
is the truth. The event of the year has critics raving. It's an astounding political thriller you won't be able to turn away. Robert Redford, Meryl Streep, Tom Cruise, Lions for Lambs. Rated R. A Robert Redford film. Worldwide, November 9th.
So before we touch on Lions for Lambs, we need to kind of talk about what led up to this particular movie coming out, because there is a little bit of an interesting history behind this. MGM in November, a year before this, in November 2006, MGM announced that Tom Cruise and his production partner, Paula Wagner, were going to resurrect United Artists, and this came after the duo split from Paramount Pictures after 14 years there. Of course, Tom Cruise had a lot of his movies there at the studio, and Cruise, Wagner, and MGM Studios created United Artists Entertainment, and the producer, actor, and his partners owned a 30% stake of the studio with the approval of the owners at MGM. The deal gave both of them complete control in production on development, and Wagner was named the CEO and was a lot of the series of 4 films per year with varying budgets. And Cruise was slated to be a producer for the revamped studio and the occasional star. And one of the first movies they did was Lions for Lambs, and they would continue. They continued to produce movies in general. They were supposed to be starring vehicles for Cruise. He'd have one other film with Valkyrie coming out the next year, but not even a year before this thing was supposed to get started with Lions for Lambs, Wagner was already gone. She went on to go ahead and produce films independently, and it led to speculation that United Artists was basically heading for another overhaul again. And they've gone on to re-release. They went on to re-release a couple of other movies in 2009. Release movies in 2009, not re-release, but we had the remake of Fame. We had Hot Tub Time Machine, and so yeah, so this was kind of a failure on many fronts for Tom Cruise and Paula Wagner. They went into this movie, they went into this idea of buying United Artists, thinking that this was going to be their future going forward. Like, this was going to be the way they were going to make movies from this point going forward. And it kind of is very reminiscent of something like, when Francis Ford Coppola ran United Artists and American Zoetrope, and in the 90s, and then more notably David Putnam, which we've talked about in length on this channel. So if you want to go check that out, go ahead and check out the video. I'll leave that in the corner and the description as well. But yeah, this was supposed to be the first film to kind of start that trend of Tom Cruise's movie future going forward, with films being made at United Artists. But as you can see, as I've been saying, it didn't quite work out as well as they probably wanted it to. And considering this movie in particular, yeah, it's kind of hard. It's kind of easy to see why this failed. So, in this movie, you have the connection between a platoon of United States soldiers in Afghanistan, a U.S. senator, a reporter, and a California college professor. And in this film, you also have a title that alludes to incompetent leaders sending brave soldiers into the slaughter of battle. It takes aim at the U.S. government's protection of wars in the Middle East, sending three different simultaneous stories. A senator who launches a new military strategy and details it to a journalist, that senator played by Tom Cruise, two soldiers involved in said operations, and their college professor trying to re-engage a promising student by telling their story. The professor being played by, I believe Robert Redford, and the reporter is played by Meryl Streep. And Meryl Streep had two movies that were very much anti-war in 2007. In fact, this, like I said with Rendition, we're getting into that trend of a lot of movies that were anti-war films, and most of them did not do very well. We'd have a couple exceptions here and there, like The Kingdom, but this is another one of those movies where a noble idea for a film, but it doesn't help when the film is completely and utterly boring, and this is definitely a film that is very, very boring of a film. I mean, this is a movie that is nothing but just, lectures, speeches about how, the war is bad and all that type of stuff, and how, you have one side going, the war is bad, and the other side going, like, the war is good, here's why we need it, and it's just like, that's the whole movie, and you can pack on as many stars as you want to, but you gotta give these people something more than that. Like, you've got to give them something else besides just sitting there for a lecture for an hour and a half, not even an hour and a half. I think this was it's an hour and a half. It's barely 90 minutes long. It's a movie that is just kind of like, it literally does feel like you're watching a lecture in a college, auditorium, or at a presser or something like that. And it's just like, that's not what people want to see in a movie unless you're actually doing something that's interesting or engaging or something that actually people can get invested in. And there's just none of that in this movie. It is nothing but just dialogue being let out, filler. Nothing is going on. Like, you barely see any of the action overseas. Like, and even when you do, it's usually just archival footage. Like, there's literally nothing of value here in this movie whatsoever. This was based on an off-Broadway play or something like that, like something like on the lines of A Few Good Men. Like, maybe you could make that work, but then again, I mean, we've seen that Tom Cruise can be a great actor before. We've seen him, Robert Redford and Meryl Streep, in a lot of great movies. They're just doing nothing but just sitting there, just talking and talking and talking, and it's so boring because nobody is listening nobody wants to listen to this stuff because you're not telling it in a way that gets people invested in what's going on here. This was supposed to be the movie that was supposed to set the future for Tom Cruise's United Artists, and it bombed badly. Like, this film was not a hit with critics. It was a massive failure at the box office, and yeah, massive failure at the box office maybe is an overstatement, because it did make its budget back. It made about $63 million worldwide, which is about two times its budget of $35 million, close to it. But at the same time, it's just like, people were very disappointed by the end result of this film. The film did not perform as well as they were hoping to, and it kind of put a damper on Tom Cruise's career going forward for a couple of years. Like, it took a little bit before he and Paramount eventually reconciled, and then, lo and behold, his career's back on track now with the Mission Impossible movies, and look what he's done with Jack Reacher and Top Gun. I mean, this is the start of that that low trend for him for a little bit. Like, nobody was really taking him seriously. And when he was trying to be taken seriously, he took it too far. And lo and behold, the film that we got was a film that is just so bland, so boring, so uninventive, there's just nothing there. Now, the second film that he would do under ASAT United Artists, Valkyrie, I think is a much better film. And we'll touch on that when we get to Christmas 2008. But that's a much better movie than this film was. This whole movie just feels very preachy. It's boring. Nothing is going on. It's great seeing these actors on screen, but you got to give them something to do besides just lecturing you for an hour and a half. This film did that, and it failed miserably on so many levels. But I guess if there's a positive here, hey, you get to see Andrew Garfield in his first feature film. You also get to see Derek Luke, Peter Berg, Kevin Dunn, Michael Pena. There's a good cast in here, just nothing here that really helps them give us a reason why this film deserved to exist whatsoever. And yeah, it's a major disappointment, especially with the talent that they have on here. So yeah, you could skip lines for Lamb. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, and that is the horror film P2.
Hey, are you Deep Throat?
Oh, no, I'm Rim Job. You want level P2.
Now, to be fair, that would be a much better movie than the actual movie that we're going to show you that is called P2.
For 3 years, Angela Bridges has worked in this building.
I can't wait to see you guys.
Please don't be late.
I promise, I won't.
And for 3 years,
This is not happening.
he's been watching.
Hey! I'm still in here! Wait!
Looks like somebody's playing games.
The terror won't stop until she stops him. P2.
So let me see if I get this straight. She's worked there for 3 years, and yet she has no idea how the hell to get out of there, get out of that building whatsoever. Like, that's your first mistake right there. You've been there for 3 years, and you have no idea how to get out of this building in any way, shape, or form. Like, none of that makes any sense whatsoever. But you have Rachel Nichols, who plays a young businesswoman who's being trapped in an underground parking garage in Midtown Manhattan on Christmas Eve, where she's pursued by a socially awkward psychopathic security guard who is obsessed with her, played by Wes Bentley. Gee, typecast it that much, dude? Like, it's basically the same role he's playing in American Beauty, except this time he's a serial killer. And again, it says something when the Dexter's Laboratory episode Trapped with a Vengeance, where Dexter is trapped in the school with the security guard, with like the janitor and all that, when that is much more threatening than a movie like this. That should tell you everything you need to know when a cartoon is easily more terrifying than whatever the hell this experience is that this woman is going through here. Like, yeah, this is a terrible movie. And it's written by Alexander Aja, who did High Tension, which was a great movie. And this was made by the same co-writer who did that movie. But this is not directed by him, though. And I think that's really, I think that's part of the problem with the movie. The other problem is that nobody in this movie is likable at all. Like, I'd be more interested in it if I cared more about the characters involved in here, specifically Rachel Nichols' character. But I'm sorry, you look at her in this movie and watch what she does in the film, and it's just like, you've set yourself up for this situation because you're way too dumb to be in this situation. And like I said, it takes you, you've been here for 3 years and you have no idea how to get out of this building. Like, that's what it's like. Things like that are just are just complicated things that I can't really take away from the film in terms of the level here. Like, I get it. It's a psychological horror film. It's a horror film that's supposed to be featuring dumb white people. I get that. But at the same time, it's just like you can't be this stupid. If everybody else can get out of this freaking building but you, that's your problem, man. Like, the guys from Seinfeld in the parking garage episode found a way to get out of that building easily. He's found a way to get out of this building easier than this lady does. Like, this is... And Wes Bentley is not threatening whatsoever. Like I said, he's just playing the same character he played in American Beauty all over again. Except that he's less scarier and creepier, and it's just more he's just more of a creep, more than, not even a good creep, just like a generic stock movie character creep. In fact, everyone's here is playing stock movie characters. Like, Rachel Nichols is the damsel in distress. Everything about the movie just... nothing about the film just works at all. It's a boring film. You don't like it because you don't like these characters whatsoever. And yeah, it's just not worth it. And yeah, there's gore in the movie because, we're in the Saw hostile age, but yeah, being bloody and gory doesn't save your movie by any means necessary. And this is definitely one of those examples of a movie where they do that and it fails to not work whatsoever. So you can skip P2. So 3 misfires in a row. Can we finally get a good movie out of this next one here? Well, it depends on who you ask on that, because our last film that we have here did win the Oscar for Best Picture this year, but not without some major controversies that went on around the time. Let's talk about the Coen brothers' No Country for Old Men.
Innocent man who found a fortune. A deadly stranger.
I'm looking for Llewellyn Moss.
On his trail.
These people are killing. They won't quit.
They won't neither.
Now,
What is it?
there's no turning back.
You bring me the money and I'll let her go.
Newsweek, Time, and Rolling Stone agree. There's no movie like No Country for Old Men. Rated R. In select theaters this Friday.
So in this film, you follow 3 main characters. Llewellyn Moss, played by Josh Brolin, who's a Vietnam War veteran, and a welder who stumbles upon a large sum of money in the desert. Anton Chigurh, played by Javier Bardem, who's a hitman seeking to recover the money, and Ed Tom Bell, played by Tommy Lee Jones, a sheriff investigating the crime. You also have Kelly MacDonald as Moss's wife Carla Jean, and Woody Harrelson as Carson Wells, a bounty hunter seeking Moss in the return of the money. That's $2 million. This is a film, of course, that won the Coen brothers their Oscars for Best Picture. They also won Best Supporting Actor for Javier Bardem. Trying to think of what else it won. I can't remember if it won Best Director. I don't think so. I think that went to the guy who did Atonement. Let me double check here. No, they won it. No, they did win Best Director here. I did not know that. But Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, they won those awards. Was also up for Best Cinematography, Film Editing, Sound Editing, and Sound Mixing. But yeah, this was a film that won them all these Oscars. Do I think it's their best movie? No. I still think The Big Lebowski and Fargo are their crowning achievements. Fargo should have won Best Picture in 1996, but Harvey Weinstein had a saying in that. So, but yeah, Fargo I think should have been the Best Picture winner for the Coen brothers. But this is a really good film regardless. It's a very engaging film. You do get invested with the characters involved in here. Josh Brolin is very good in the film. Tommy Lee Jones is really good. Woody Harrelson has a good supporting role here. Of course, one of the biggest takeaways from the movie is Javier Bardem as Anton Chigurh, who is very good in the movie. Like, he plays this hitman role to a T. He comes off as the menacing threat that he looks like he should be, and it's a really damn good performance by him, where he definitely deserves to win the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for this role. It's a great role for him, and overall the film is really good. But the big question is, why was this so polarizing at the time? Well, it mostly came from the ending of the movie and the major differences from the novel itself. They do a lot of things that's different from the book. Like I'm reading on here that one key difference, according to Craig Kennedy, one of the key differences is that of focus. The novel belongs to Sheriff Bell, played by Tommy Lee Jones, and each chapter begins with a narration by him, which dovetails and counterpoints the main actions of the main story. And though the film opens with Bell speaking, much of what he says in the book is condensed and it turns up in other forms. And Bell also has an entire backstory that didn't make it into the film, resulting in a movie that's more simplified thematically, but one that gives more of the characters an opportunity to shine. That's from Kennedy himself. And Jay Ellis elaborates on Chigurh's encounter with the man behind the counter at the gas station, where McCarthy gives up Chigurh's question as, "What's the most you've ever seen lost in a coin toss?" He says, "The film elays with the word saw, but the Coens, of course, tend to the visual, which the book describes the setting as almost dark. The film clearly depicts high noon. No shadows are notable in the establishing shot of the gas station, and the sunlight is bright even if behind cloud cover." But one of the other big things was that the ending was largely criticized. Some people said it didn't have an ending. Others say it had an ending, and it was very much a weird controversy that was going on at the time. And when I first saw the movie for the first time, I really didn't notice it, honestly. I was just I came out of it going like, this is a really good movie. And as time has gone on, I get where people could say that the final climax of the movie isn't really much of a climax overall. But I mean, I did like what they did with it overall. I thought it was very impressively handled how they managed to work it like they did. I personally think it's a controversy that was just of the time, and it really, I felt like maybe it needed to take its time to really get people to look at it and go like, maybe this is actually, there was an ending there and we just didn't see it. I mean, I don't know for certain. I never really saw the problem when I first saw it the first time around, so maybe I just didn't. Maybe I just need to have seen what everyone was talking about beforehand. But then again, this was also coming up. I don't know if they started shooting this before the book came out, or they just had no idea what the book was what was actually in the book, or they just decided to do a new ending regardless, kind of take the Forrest Gump route, because you ever read Forrest Gump, the book, it's definitely much different than the movie itself, and it falters big time compared to how good that movie is. So I can understand on that front why they would want to change the ending around, but I think either way it works very well for what the Coen brothers do best here. I thought it worked very well. I thought it was very enjoyable. I think it's still a really good film overall. No, it's not one of the best Picture winners of all time, nor is it really the best Coen brothers movie of all time, but it's a film that got them the Oscar, and for that, it's a good movie, so I would be willing to give them a pass on that. I wish that a movie like Fargo would have won it, but, you can't always get what you want as the song goes. But overall, I did like No Country for Old Men. I still think it's very enjoyable. I still think it's a really good film. And so, with all of that said, we're going to wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. The next time we meet, we'll head into the middle of November with 5 movies, including Robert Zemeckis' latest motion capture animated film. I almost said stop motion, but motion capture animated film. This one is Beowulf. Maybe one of the more underrated ones he's done. And we also have Natalie Portman, Dustin Hoffman, and Jason Bateman in the family adventure Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium. Javier Bardem once again starring in another movie, this time Love in the Time of Cholera. Richard Kelly's follow-up to Donnie Darko with Dwayne Johnson, Sean William Scott, and Sarah Michelle Gellar. The very polarizing Southland Tales. And Nicole Kidman starring at Margot at the Wedding. So we'll take a look at those 5 movies coming up on tomorrow's show. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please go ahead and hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, notification button, and the bell, because you get updates on when new videos come out, and we do post new videos here every day. And don't forget, coming up after I post this, we have a new Time About the Movies flashback coming up with, as we head back to July 31st, 1987, on the weekend where Timothy Dalton takes over as the role of James Bond for the first of only his 2 movies. The Living Daylights. We also have Joel Schumacher's latest film, The Lost Boys, Made to Order, and Ovaries. So we'll take a look at those 4 movies coming up on Time About the Movies flashback. That's going to be coming up when after I post this up here, which will be right after this. So stick around, because we will be right back.